Good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you might be. My name is Kevin Michael Grayson. This is the KMG show for Wednesday, June the 2nd, 2021. Anrun in the chat asks, hi, Kevin, what happened to the planned Theater Thursday and Book Club lists tweet? I fell behind on that. Thank you for reminding me of it. I will fix that after the show today. So, a remarkable thing happened last year, 2020. Well, lots of remarkable things happened last year, but this was one of the strangest, and it has to do with how we regard bureaucrats. Now, traditionally, bureaucrats were regarded as vain, self-serving, shifty, never answering a question directly. But in 2020, bureaucrats became the bestest people in the whole world. We love bureaucrats now. Oh, but they're health bureaucrats. Oh, they're health bureaucrats. So that makes them different from any other kind of bureaucrats. Health bureaucrats are heroes. Now, saints even. And if you think I'm exaggerating, I'll refer you to Government Street in Victoria, where there is a building hoarding facing the street, which for a year has been covered with which I can only describe as iconic renderings of the faces of Dr. Bonnie Henry, who is British Columbia's chief latrine walla, and Dr. Theresa Tam, who is Canada's chief latrine walla. But of course, the premier saint bureaucrat is Dr. Anthony Fauci. Here's a story from Breitbart by Simon Kent, and it's from yesterday, but it seems that yesterday was a long time ago. The headline is Rona Forever, WHO and Fauci warn monumental error to assume coronavirus danger is over. Gots to keep the panic going. And there is a video attached to this where we see Dr. Fauci wearing not one, but two masks. And what did Dr. Fauci have to say about masks? I mean, privately. Well, we will get to that. A whole bunch of the Federalist is all over this story. Okay, we'll begin with this. White House press corps doesn't ask Psaki, that would be Jen, not Jennifer, but Jen Psaki, any questions about Fauci's emails. The White House press corps, this is Jordan Davidson, did not ask President Joe Biden's press secretary one question about the recently published emails between Dr. Anthony Fauci, health officials, and other scientists discussing COVID-19's origins and mitigation techniques. During the nearly 45-minute press briefing, Psaki fielded questions about the Russians' hacks, the president's vaccination incentives, and bipartisanship, but did not hear one mention of Fauci or the role he played in flip-flopping about masks, downplaying the National Institutes of Health's funding of gain-of-function research in Wuhan, and his relationship with Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg, who censored COVID-19 posts until recently. One press corps member for The Spectator said she had planned to ask about the smoking gun emails, but was never called on by Psaki. I was going to ask about Fauci's emails at today's White House press briefing, but unfortunately I was not called on, Amber Athey explained. My second question was going to be about Biden shutting down the State Department investigation into COVID origins. Hopefully we will be back in the briefing room in a few weeks, depending on how the rotation shakes out. So let's move on to this. From Jordan Davidson again. Corrupt media ignores smoking gun emails in order to protect Fauci. BuzzFeed News and the Washington Post both did the legwork for stories by requesting Fauci's emails through the Freedom of Information Act, but neither of their articles detailing the batch of emails finds fault with him. Instead, The authors focus on how tough Fauci's job was over the last year, as he faced criticism and pressure from all sides of the political aisle. Anthony Fauci's emails reveal the pressure that fell on one man. The fawning BuzzFeed headline read, "The story praises Fauci for being courteous, low-key, and empathetic. He politely interacts with the office assistants who help him with his correspondence, and he sweats over the proper way to let people down," the article states, noting how much popularity he garnered from around the world. The Washington Post headline and article also gushed over the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases director for being viewed as a reassuring voice of reason. Anthony Fauci's pandemic emails, "All is well, despite some crazy people in this world," the headline reads, noting Fauci's willingness to lose sleep for his job. Yes, he suffers for our sins. Here's a story from the Federalist from Sean Fleetwood. Dr. Anthony Fauci colluded with Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg on distributing government-approved information on COVID-19 across the social media platform. In a series of March 2020 emails obtained by BuzzFeed News, Zuckerberg invited the infectious disease doctor to partake in the company's newly developed informational program on the COVID-19 pandemic. "This isn't public yet, but we're building a coronavirus information hub that we're going to put at the top of Facebook for everyone, 200 plus million Americans, 2.5 billion people worldwide, with two goals. One, make sure people can get authoritative information from reliable sources. And two, encourage people to practice social distance and give people ideas for doing this using internet tools," the March 15th email read. This will be live within the next 48 hours. Zuckerberg continued, stating that, quote, "As a central part of this hub, I think it would be useful to include a video from you because people trust and want to hear from experts rather than just a bunch of agencies and political leaders." Yes, a coronavirus information hub put at the top of Facebook for everyone, but of course, Facebook is in no way a publisher. It's merely a platform. Zuckerberg suggested interviewing Fauci on one of his Facebook Q&A live streams, while also noting his continued efforts to spread authoritative information across the social media platform. An additional offer to Fauci is fully redacted, however. In his response dated March 17th, Fauci praised Zuckerberg's planned COVID-19 information hub, while also expressing his willingness to cooperate with the tech giant. Quote, "Your idea and proposal sound terrific. I would be happy to do a video for your hub," Fauci said. "We need to reach as many people as possible and convince them to take mitigation strategies seriously, or things will get much, much worse. Also, your idea about redacted is very exciting." It's another story from Jordan Davidson from the same source. Dr. Anthony Fauci knew about U.S. funding for the gain-of-function research occurring at the Wuhan lab in China, but downplayed its role in the COVID-19 pandemic, new emails show. Fauci recently denied that specific research was used by the Overseas Virology Institute or funded by him. In emails acquired by BuzzFeed News, Fauci conversed with NIAID Principal Deputy Director Hugh Auchincloss in a conversation labeled "Important" about an article detailing the gain-of-function research occurring in Wuhan through the Wuhan Virology Institute. "Hugh, it is essential that we speak this AM," he wrote. "Read this paper. You will have tasks today that must be done. The paper you sent me says the experiments were performed before the gain-of-function pause, but have since been reviewed and approved by NIH, Auchincloss said in a February 1, 2020 email thread with Fauci. "Not sure what that means, since Emily is sure that no coronavirus work has gone through the P3 framework. She will try to determine if we have any distant ties to this work abroad." In his reply, Fauci said, "Okay, stay tuned." The U.S. government banned funding for the gain-of-function research in 2014, but the Wuhan Institute of Virology was still operating and conducting the controversial research using U.S. taxpayer dollars. This funding was funneled unscrutinized to the EcoHealth Alliance by the NIAID, led by Fauci, to propel Wuhan studies on bat coronaviruses, and allowed NIAID to hide research that they said didn't meet the standard for gain of function from the Potential Pandemic Pathogens Control and Oversight Framework Review Board. Fauci previously defended gain of function in 2012 and said it might be worth it even if it caused a pandemic. Quote, in an unlikely but conceivable turn of events, what if that scientist becomes infected with the virus, which leads to an outbreak and ultimately triggers a pandemic? Scientists working in this field might say, as indeed I have said, that the benefits of such experiments and the resulting knowledge outweigh the risks, unquote. Just last month, Senator Rand Paul blasted Fauci for denying that funding for the Wuhan lab that experimented with bat-based coronaviruses came from his department at the National Institutes of Health. Paul said during a Senate committee hearing, gain-of-function research, as you know, is juicing up naturally occurring animal viruses to infect humans. To arrive at the truth, the U.S. government should admit that the Wuhan Virology Institute was experimenting to enhance the coronavirus's ability to infect humans, unquote. Fauci, however, denied that the supervirus creation research by Ralph Baric, a U.S. virologist, and the bat lady Shi Zhengli at the Wuhan Virology Institute was funded by the NIH. Fauci also denied that the money that was funneled by the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases to nonprofit EcoHealth Alliance to study bat-based coronaviruses in China, including at the Wuhan lab, was gain of function. And here is a story by Paul Joseph Watson at Summit News. The doctor who thanked Dr. Fauci for dismissing the Wuhan lab leak theory is the same guy who gave $600,000 to the lab, investigated it for the World Health Organization, and then acted as a Facebook fact checker, censoring info on the Wuhan lab leak theory. You couldn't make this up. Watson comments, it's like something out of a Bond movie. Yes, and here's a story from Wendell Husbo at Breitbart. Dr. Anthony Fauci reportedly described mask wearing as, quote, not really effective, unquote, in a February 5th, 2020 email to Sylvia Burwell, president of American University and former U.S. Health and Human Services Secretary. The typical mask you buy in the drugstore is not really effective in keeping out virus, which is small enough to pass through the material. Well, that is exactly what I and many others who have been labeled at best skeptics and at worst conspiracy mongers, tinfoil hat wearers, we've been saying this for a year. And now it turns out that Dr. Fauci admitted this in February of 2020. Here is the full reply from Dr. Fauci. Masks are really for infected people to prevent them from spreading infection to people who are not infected, rather than protecting uninfected people from acquiring infections. The typical mask you buy in the drugstore is not really effective in keeping out virus, which is small enough to pass through the material. It might, however, provide some slight benefit in keeping out gross droplets if someone coughs or sneezes on you. I do not recommend that you wear a mask, particularly since you are going to a very low-risk location. Your instincts are correct. Money is best spent on medical countermeasures, such as diagnostics and vaccines. In a 60 Minutes interview from March 8, 2020, Fauci said, quote, there's no reason to be walking around with a mask. When you're in the middle of an outbreak, wearing a mask might make people feel a little bit better, and it might even block a droplet, but it's not providing the perfect protection that people think it is. And often there are unintended consequences. People keep fiddling with the mask, and they keep touching their face, unquote. CNN later reported Fauci changed his mind, that it was a mistake not to recommend people wear masks. I wonder why that might be. We've already had an admission from the British government that their initial recommendation was that people keep a 1 meter distance, or that's a little over 3 feet from each other. But they doubled this to 2 meters in order to persuade people that this was really serious. In other words, they did this to terrify people, to isolate us from each other, to make us afraid of every other single person on Earth. Yeah. Okay, so Dr. Fauci has a book. Oh, perhaps he and Governor Cuomo of New York could go on a joint book tour. That'd be fun, wouldn't it? Here's a piece from the Federalist by Kylie Zempel. We learned on Tuesday that even after America fully returns to normal, we will be left with yet another unpleasant side effect of the pandemic. More of Anthony Fauci's face on our screens and pages, this time backed by the communist sympathizers at Disney. The director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, following the footsteps of scandal-ridden New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, is set to release a book in November, specifically focused on truth, service, and the way forward, according to the book's subtitle. The book will reportedly be about the Wuhan virus pandemic and will also include interviews from throughout his tenure at NIAID. Disney-owned National Geographic is not only publishing his book, but also producing a documentary titled simply Fauci, starring him as its subject. Americans who have submitted to the CDC's COVID orthodoxy have looked to Fauci as a benevolent god. Left-wing politicians enjoyed the power they accrued during the pandemic thanks to Fauci-endorsed lockdowns, and regular citizens garnered social credit for masking and double masking and waving around their vaccine cards like Forrest Gump at Lieutenant Dan. So when Fauci calls the shots, they willingly follow. The Fauci hero worship mirrors the hagiography of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. As with notorious RBG enamel pins, Halloween costumes, and documentaries, the left has memorialized Fauci with various tchotchkes. They bought Fauci Christmas ornaments, Fauci prayer candles, and expletive-laden Fauci mugs. Gretchen Whitmer even strategically positions her Fauci throw pillow to score cool ant points during media appearances. Zempel continues, it's hard to take any of this seriously, especially the forthcoming book and documentary. The highest paid federal employee, who has become best known for flip-flopping on COVID messaging and fudging the numbers, is now going to pontificate about truth and service in an autobiography where he gets to be the hero. What a joke. The Amazon book overview reads, before becoming the face of the White House Coronavirus Task Force and America's most trusted doctor, Dr. Fauci had already devoted 3 decades to public service. Those looking to live a more compassionate and purposeful life will find inspiration in his unique perspective on leadership, expecting the unexpected and finding joy in difficult times. Most trusted doctor is an interesting way to characterize a man for whom a bill was recently proposed in the House of Representatives called the Fauci Incompetence Requires Early Dismissal Act, calling for the health director to be, you guessed it, fired. You don't have to be an elected representative to know what a cataclysmic failure Fauci has been. Average Americans and business owners know most acutely how this pro-lockdown scientific technical elite steered the country at their expense. When the science said reopen, Fauci frightened businesses into staying closed. He's also repeatedly flip-flopped his messaging at best and outright lied at worst. Instead of telling people the truth about masks from the get-go, Fauci discouraged using them when he wanted to ration them for healthcare workers, then encouraged a nationwide mask mandate when that seemed politically expedient. He flipped back and forth on in-person learning and ignored CDC data on low transmission in schools. Yeah. And I found this on Twitter. And credit where due, this is Elena at Elena for Liberty. You mean that guy that botched HIV/AIDS, botched COVID-2? Weird. Just a reminder that back in the 1980s, we had AIDS, which resulting in a panic rather similar to the COVID-19 panic, although, as it turns out, AIDS was not really a threat to anyone who wasn't a male homosexual, an IV drug user, or had been given infected blood in a transfusion. But no, Dr. Fauci was going around telling everyone that AIDS was everyone's disease, also touting for AZT, one of the most disastrous drugs in history, which quite literally killed every single person who took it. And yet somehow his reputation did not suffer as a result. Curious how that works. Wouldn't you say? Let's go to the chat. Okay, hello to Dan Pelcaso 88, to Professor Paul, to Tom Anderson and Anrun Chokokin 666, Roulette Cracked, Isaiah Selassie. Anrun says we need a good nickname for that weasel. Il Fauci never took off. Yeah, it's a shame. Yeah. Grouchy Fauci says Chokokin 666. Random number generator says, no time to focus on Fauci. We're at war with the largest health crisis ever, racism. Dan suggests Tony Baloney. That's pretty good. Roulette Crack says, I thought big tech were not public utilities. Well, yeah, I suppose they are when they need to be, when they're forced to step to the forefront to prevent misinformation and disinformation from infecting people's minds. Enron says, careful, Kevin, you are quoting a U.S. senator again. This time they might give you 2 weeks or a month. Hello to Walrus Lolbertarian and Head McNeck. Yeah, I don't know. I suppose I'm taking a risk in talking about this, but we have the emails now, and we know what Fauci has admitted. Rand Paul crowed on Twitter today, told you, and he is absolutely right. Chogokin 666 says, psychos on the bus still gloved up, wiping hand sanitizer on the bell before pressing it. Yes, at the very least, I think that anyone who wears a mask outdoors should be struck off the voter rolls. You know, I'm reminded of a similar panic based on shoddy science, which was forced on us with very little resistance, which is the banning of smoking in restaurants, bars, etc. This was because of a government study, a meta-analysis of studies on the harmfulness of secondhand smoke. And the study was a complete botch. This issue actually went to court. The people in charge of the study began by cherry picking among the various studies and throwing out the ones that showed that secondhand smoke had no deleterious effect. In the end, they ended up with a 1.9 effect, okay, 19%, which is statistical static. If you want to look at the similar figure for actually smoking itself, it is not 1.19, it is 10. I mean, anything under 5 is not much statistical value. So we have smoking banned on planes and bars and restaurants, even on patios. And you see this with the masks. When I see people wearing masks outdoors, I just want to shout at these people, do you have any idea how vast the atmosphere is? And you can demonstrate this with cigarette smoke. You know, take a puff, inhale it, and watch it dissipate instantly. And yet we were all banned from smoking outside, which I can only regard as sadism, pure and simple. The same thing with these mask mandates and the social distancing and the hand sanitizer. Why is hand sanitizer still out there, given that it was admitted months ago that surfaces are not how COVID-19 is spread. Again, let's just keep everyone terrified, which is good for our political leaders. People here on a roll with the film puns, says Steve. Middle Mike contributes, dude, where's my mask? Popcasso88 contributes, Fauci and Cuomo, dumb and dumber. Yes, and we haven't heard a mention yet of these disgusting videos. Hey, Dr. Fauci, give us vaccine. Ugh. Universal mental retardation. Okay, I fell for the same AIDS scare tactics in the 80s. Guilty, says Don Willis. Well, apparently everyone in the world was going to get AIDS. And I was in the media at that time. I was a talk radio producer, and we did a lot of segments on AIDS. And I fell for the panic too. One day, after I'd had a shower, I noticed a discoloration on my upper chest, and I thought, oh my God, I've got it. And then, when I calmed down, I thought, there's no possible way that I could have this. But can you get it through kissing? Can you get it from toilet seats? Here's a fun fact about Leonard Bernstein, the late American composer and conductor. Lenny used to surprise people who he was meeting by kissing them fully on the lips and then joking afterwards, well, I guess we'll find out if AIDS can be spread by kissing. Funny guy, right? Metal Mike says Doug Ford is going to keep schools closed because a little kid named Arthur told him to. He actually said that today. Yes, I've seen that. He was like a little butler, and he was perfectly happy about not going to school. He just wanted graduation, and this is the basis on which Doug Ford decides that, yep, not going to open the schools. He really is a stupid man. Thanks to Chogokin666 for your kind words. Polygon says COVID was nothing more than a moral panic, a color revolution in order to manufacture millions of. I'm not going to continue that. But you notice, obviously the change after Joe Biden, who of course was legitimately elected president on November 6th of last year, that, after they didn't have Trump to blame COVID on, completely all turned around, except that you set these forces, you set up these forces, this panic, and it's difficult to dissipate it. So now we are talking about vaccine passports, and we're talking about people still having to wear masks, people not wearing masks, being banned if they're not vaccinated, all that sort of thing. Emmett Kelly's Earth says the fact that the MSM is now willing to say a Wuhan lab leak of COVID is not a conspiracy theory makes me think something else is to blame. Let's see, what else do we have here? Polygon says, imagine manufacturing a meme virus to oust a guy who's a 90s era business Democrat. Why do we allow liberals civil rights protections? I fully expect a massive eruption of confirmed UFO sightings now, presidential address and all, says Head McNeck. Tom Anderson says a not insignificant number of people will continue to wear masks whenever they leave the house for the rest of their lives. Chocokin666 says, I watched the bumblebees pollinating flowers today, and it made me feel good. They are so cute and diligent. Roulette Crack says you can use Drudge as the bellwether of what they want to get out now, seeing as it is a compromised rag. Don Willis says smokers are lovers of Western freedom. Indeed. And Pelcasso88 says to Wuhan Fu, thanks for everything. So moving on, but we're still on this same topic. Oh, yes, more from Dr. Fauci's emails. This is from Wendell Husbo at Breitbart. Emails show Dr. Fauci recommended canceling religious services March the 5th, 2020, but approved campaign rallies and cruise ships for the healthy 4 days later. Fauci responded to Joshua Gordon, the director of the National Institute of Mental Health, who asked if services should be canceled. You should counsel the rabbi to cancel the services, this redacted. Are the local city state health departments redacted doing any contact tracing? Should I counsel them to cancel service this Friday, Saturday? I'm hoping you can spare a bit of time for this advice, redacted. PSS, great job today in the hearing. Yeah, these are boon times for Christophobes and haters of religion in general, because religious services are so yucky and dangerous. John Nolte writes in Breitbart, oh, look, leftists really are destroying Portland, and the China virus lab leak theory is looking like a real possibility. How about that? But the corrupt corporate media have been telling me for the better part of a year that to suggest either was engaging in the spreading of dangerous right-wing conspiracy theories. In fact, to even suggest such a thing, most especially the lab leak, was considered such a danger to American democracy. Our fascist tech lords not only blacklisted such talk, they blacklisted many of those who dared spread these ideas, and did so while the fake media pounded away with their fake fact checks. Well, let me just say, yes, once again, as we saw with Governor Andrew Grandma Slayer Cuomo's nursing home policy, and the deep state ginning up a coup using the Russia collusion hoax, and the Obama administration illegally spying on Donald Trump, and the Democrats locking down their states. We now have two more right-wing conspiracy theories which have just been proven true, not only to be not conspiracy theories, but in the case of Portland, 100% true. And in the case of the China lab leak theory, a perfectly reasonable assumption that looks more likely by the day. Here are some headlines from the far-left Washington Post, July 2020. Violent protest clashes turned Portland into a right-wing boogeyman. From The Guardian, August 2020. Portland suffers serious street violence as far-right return prepared to fight. From Vanity Fair in July of last year. Conservative media seizes on Portland is burning narrative. From The Oregonian, July 2020. Feds right-wing media paint Portland as city under siege. A tour of town shows otherwise. From CNN in July 2020. Right-wing media plays up a Portland protest violence. Yes, for more than 100 days, people headed downtown and tried to burn down the federal building. Many people were arrested, and then they were let back out on the streets. And some days they went right back to rioting. But nothing to see here, folks. These are mostly peaceful protests. Nolte continues, I could go on until we run out of internet, but you get the point. As the domestic left-wing terrorists and Antifa and Black Lives Matter ravaged Portland, the establishment media launched a coordinated gaslighting campaign to convince anyone still stupid enough to believe the establishment media that Portland was either under siege by Trump supporters or that right-of-center media were exaggerating the whole thing. You know, a big right-wing conspiracy theory. As we reported yesterday, the Washington Post has finally been forced to admit what has always been the truth. Quote, things are now so bad in Democrat-run Portland, the far-left Washington Post has been forced to acknowledge not only how bad things are, but that the defund the police movement has proven to be a disaster. Gee, what a shock. Left-wing anarchists are causing havoc, no shit, and black people are bearing a disproportionate brunt of the fallout, which is always the case with Democrats in charge. How bad are things downtown? Over the past year, Portland's Democrat Mayor Ted Wheeler told the Post the city has recorded an 85% decline in downtown foot traffic. The result has been economic despair and more crime. Over the spring, the Post adds a mob of self-described anarchists, usually masked and dressed in black, has shattered windows at the Oregon Historical Society, at a Boys and Girls Club, at a public library, and at many small businesses, including some owned by Black merchants. The lab leak report, says Nolte, are really something else. And he gives a bunch of headlines. Oh, Tom Cotton is playing a dangerous game, says CNN. The Washington Post, Tom Cotton keeps repeating a coronavirus conspiracy theory that was already debunked. From Vox, debunked. From Slate, that's because the rumors of a lab escape or a bioweapon stem from historical amnesia, a caricatured villain, and good old-fashioned racism. PolitiFact, Tucker Carlson guest airs debunked conspiracy theory. Far left Washington Post fact checker Glenn Kessler, it is virtually impossible for this virus to jump from the lab. And Nolte concludes, unless you enjoy being lied to, it is time to ignore the media. Oh, yes, more on this. This is from a Twitchy. Kick the PR up to 11. CN spin on the Fauci emails overheats propaganda detectors everywhere. Emails to and from Dr. Fauci that were obtained via FOIA request show that the epidemiologist at the forefront during the COVID-19 outbreak may well have suspected the virus originated from a lab in China, in spite of what the public was being told. Given all this, here's how CNN is framing the Fauci email story. This is from an email. Thousands of emails from and to Fauci revealed the weight that came with his role as a rare source of frank honesty within the Trump administration's COVID-19 task force. From Razor on Twitter, here's an email that shows Fauci knew, worried, then lied about what he publicly called a baseless conspiracy theory, but do go on about how he's a truthful beacon of light. Yes, the pressure that fell on one man, it's almost Christ-like. And again, from Twitchy, Fauci emails trends after journos post a cache of FOIA documents. Well, I suppose in the absence of these documents, they would have continued lying and they would have got away with it. From Summit News, Steve Watson, Liberty's group warns people being convicted without trial for lockdown breaches. Coalition of Liberty's rights groups has warned that people in the UK are being convicted of breaking coronavirus laws without being provided the means to plead innocent. The London Independent reports that cases are being processed under a system known as the single justice procedure, where one magistrate decides the outcome of a case based solely on evidence supplied by the police. This means that anyone accused of breaching lockdown restrictions could be found guilty and notified by letter without even getting a court hearing. The watchdog groups have penned a letter to the Justice Secretary outlining how likely thousands of people have been subjected to miscarriages of justice and calling for the practice to stop. The rights groups says these charges and prosecutions are being brought without sufficient oversight, without any meaningful review process, and are resulting in guilty pleas and convictions for offenses people have not committed in a process they may also not be aware of. The current situation is unjust, and the current process is unfit for purpose. The Independent notes that so far a third of the prosecutions in England and Wales under coronavirus laws have been proven to be wrongful, according to a review that is still ongoing. Ministry of Justice figures reveal that 4,400 defendants were prosecuted and 3,500 convicted under such laws in 2020 alone. It is thought that close to half of those cases fell under the single justice procedure. Well, you see, this is an emergency, so we don't need your fancy law anymore. Let the experts deal with this. And some sad news from Britain. Oliver J.J. Lane at Breitbart. The United Kingdom is on the verge of emerging from lockdown, but faced with the prospect of greater freedom in the coming weeks, a poll claims A strong majority of Britons want to keep the movements of unvaccinated countrymen restricted. A significant 71% of Britons support, quote, requiring COVID-19 passports for admission to large events in the UK, unquote, the poll claimed, with just 20% against apparently banning the unvaccinated from some public places. I don't know. I can't say that I am surprised. Let's go to Lockdown Skeptics. Begins today with a postcard from Toronto, which has been in lockdown in one form or another since last November. Ontario Premier Doug Ford hit the emergency brake in April, ramping up restrictions, and it hasn't been released yet. Our correspondent, Catherine Brennan, is more than a little fed up. In the following extract, she writes about attending her first anti-lockdown protest a couple of weeks ago. I have to admit, I felt somewhat nervous about going to the rally. Would I be arrested? What would these protesters be like? An unruly mob frothing at the mouth with questionable personal hygiene? One left-leaning politician, and in Canada we're all rather left-leaning, so this guy is practically falling over, warned that these rallies were full of white supremacists. While I am white and no amount of self-tan can disguise my Irish legs, I struggle to find anyone to fit that description, so cruelly slurred by the noticeably absent MP. How did he know who attended when he himself wasn't there? So I asked my friend, she of Russian Jewish parents who fled the pogroms living in barns for 2 years, was she secretly a white supremacist? I asked the lovely black couple who very sensibly set up lawn chairs to enjoy the convivial atmosphere, why are you here? I asked. They answered, like so many other people I spoke with, that they were worried for their kids whose lives have been on hold. They too had called their local politicians only to hear canned responses. Like me, they wondered whether a better balance might be struck between absolute risk and relative risk. They were disturbed by the political deafness on how lockdowns have affected kids' welfare. They were not anti-maskers, anti-vaxxers, or any of the ad hominem name-calling around dissent these days. They were there to show support in a time of great isolation. A paper by Donald Siegel and Robert Sauer, two professors of social science, asked how far should we take civil disobedience to the public health police state? Well, I'm going to remind you again of the situation in Nova Scotia where the premier there, Ian Rankin, closed the whole province down, even shut down the borders, shut down all religious services, and all the rest of the lockdown rules were brought into force in a province where 28 people had died over the course of the epidemic. And this fellow Rankin had the effrontery to say, oh, civil liberties, oh yes, I'm all in favor of those. 28 people. That's an average of less than 2 months. Again, from Lockdown Skeptics, almost 40% of recent COVID victims died primarily of other conditions. Did care homes achieve focused protection in the second wave? Time to move on with ending lockdown, says government advisor Sir John Bell. UK rights watchdog endorses mandatory COVID vaccination for care home staff. A quarter of Britain's pubs and restaurants have yet to reopen. And of course, yes, in Ontario, got to keep that panic going. Both the Globe and Mail and the Toronto Star are talking about a new variant, which could be even scarier. We can't stop the panic because COVID it's going to be around forever. Well, maybe if we completely destroy society and the economy, we'll get to zero COVID. But no, it's again, I suppose a lot of you listening have gotten the impression that this is some sort of test case. I mean, Neil Ferguson, or Professor Pantsdown, as they call him, he talked about communist China. That, yes, we need to have the kind of control in Britain that they have in communist China. But I don't think that we'll be able to get away with it. He actually said this. And then after the draconian lockdowns were instituted in Italy, well, apparently we can get away with what they do in communist China. And Alex Berenson, Obviously, this is a good day for him. He writes, this, friends, is what you call a smoking gun, not so much for St. Fauci, just the entire community of virologists and scientists who insisted for a year that the China GOF 2019 virus couldn't possibly have come out of a lab. No siree, Bob. Berenson is going to be on Tucker Carlson's show tonight. He says, I don't know I've ever looked forward to an interview this much to talk about. 1 hour ago, wow, the government planned to have the National Academy of Sciences, an independent group, examine the origins of SARS-CoV-2. How do I know? Fauci told a top CDC official about it in February 2020. The NAS inquiry never happened, though. Gee, I wonder why. Tom Elliott tweets, MSNBC's Nicole Wallace scores the first interview with Fauci since his emails were made public and uses it to say, the true mark of someone is if they look good even when their personal emails come out. So you passed the test. Very few of us would pass. Yes, journalism 2020. Berenson comments, the greatest thing about this interview is that halfway through, Fauci starts defending himself on the gain of function question. Oh, the science changed. We got more data. I didn't do nothing wrong. A question she has no idea exists and didn't ask. But why is Nicole Wallace on MSNBC? Because she was a member of Conservatism, Inc., political strategist associated with many losing Republican campaigns, and she was a never Trumper. So she got a gig at MSNBC. Oh, we have Republicans. We have people on the right, too. Yeah, the right, like Nicole Wallace. Berenson tweets, hey, Rand Paul, next time you have Fauci under oath, ask him what happened to the official federal investigation the National Academy of Sciences was supposed to run on the origins of SARS-CoV-2. And why he instead worked in secret with other scientists to discourage examination of the lab leak theory. Because that was clearly the successful intent of the paper that KG Anderson and others published in Nature magazine with the hidden backing of Fauci, his boss Francis Collins, and Sir Jeremy James Farrar of the Wellcome Trust, which is a big pharma company. Also, please note how Fauci distances himself from any questions about the origin in this note. This is not my area of expertise, and so I have backed off. I guess in the 12 days since he emailed Auchincloss the gain of function paper, he forgot all about it. And, oh, yes, the regime media, Christian Anderson, responds to a woman called Sherry Markson. I know it's super mundane, but it isn't actually a massive cover-up, Sherry. It's just science. Boring, I know, but it's quite a helpful thing to have in times of uncertainty. Berenson comments, woo, that's a relief. As a reporter, I always take the unsworn public statements of the people I'm covering on faith, especially when the stakes are really high. Yay, I can quit investigating now. And then I'm worried that if I keep chasing this story, I may stir up anti-Danish and anti-Italian American prejudice. I'd better stop. And Berenson comments make sense to me on a tweet from TG61124. They lied to us about PCR, masks, lockdowns, social distancing, closing schools, origins of the virus, risk, lethality of COVID, but they would never, ever lie about the vaccine. Yeah, I'm pretty much been pushed into the cynical position that was adopted by the late journalist Claude Coburn, who said, never believe anything until it has been officially denied. Of course, the media, the regime media, resembles a church. A church which is on the constant lookout for heresy, and heresy must be punished. Yes, you can't write anymore because your opinions are heretical. You will be fired, silenced, or whatever. Oh, there's this thing called Substack now? This is absolutely outrageous. You remember when Glenn Greenwald was a left-wing hero? Well, those days are long gone. There's a very lengthy hit piece, a piece on the Daily Beast. Glenn Greenwald, the new master of right-wing media. He goes on Fox News, and we can't have that because, only white supremacists go on Fox News. Only white supremacists watch Fox News. And of course, as Joe Scarborough said yesterday, these people need to be deported from the United States and replaced by grateful immigrants. Has it been your impression that recent immigrants to the United States are particularly grateful for us letting them in? That has not been my impression. That is actually the opposite of what my impression has been. But no, as everyone knows, immigrants are our betters. I mean, really, come on. You got to admit it. And so Glenn Greenwald quit a media organization which he had helped to found called The Intercept because of, well, Hunter Biden. That, as you will recall, the New York Post published sensational stories about Hunter Biden. His personal life, of course, Hunter Biden is the grifter, crackhead, incestuous son of President Biden. His personal life was covered, but also his business dealings and his father's connections. And the rest of the media decided this is not a story. It's not? Wow, it's got sex and drugs and politics and the guy who's running for president in it. That sounds like a story to me, but no. Why did this happen? It happened because the regime media decided that Joe Biden must be elected president. And we will do whatever we can to ensure that this happens. This is from Mediaite, chief CNN media correspondent and host of Reliable Sources, Brian Stelter, or Humpty as he is known, got into a war of words on Twitter with Intercept co-founder Glenn Greenwald on Wednesday after Stelter linked to a Daily Beast story that asked whether Greenwald is the new master of right-wing media. So he posted a link to this story with a quote. Within minutes, Greenwald, who has been highly critical of his former media home since his dramatic departure in October, replied to Stelter, "The only ones with a smaller audience than CNN is The Intercept. This won't help, Brian." If I were Brian Stelter, Greenwald tweeted, and hosted a weekend show that has fewer viewers than the average Manhattan street, all while watching my network collapse, I guess I'd also be doing things like tweeting random insults about me from obscure Intercept editors. Have to numb the pain. Stelter responded, "You know very little about television ratings. Reliable Sources had more than 900,000 viewers via TV last Sunday, according to Nielsen, and an even greater total when adding up online views. So don't worry about my weekend show." Greenwald responded, "They're all captive viewers in nursing homes, which is fine. They need to be entertained too. But your network is a collapsing failure because you don't have Trump to talk about anymore. He saved all your jobs, and you know that." I mean, this is humiliating. And he posted statistics, total of viewers, and it doesn't look all that good for Stelter, But again, the left, or just let's say the regime, is furious about the existence of Substack. And now, of course, let's just say skeptics like Greenwald and Matt Taibbi, they're right-wing monsters now. Anyone who is not wholly woke, well, is a right-wing monster, a white supremacist, etc., etc. Here's a story from Josh Boswell for the Daily Mail. Exclusive. Hunter's stripper baby mama was an assistant at his firm, and after she had his baby, he kicked her off company health insurance disproving claims he had no recollection of her. Text messages obtained by the Daily Mail reveal London Roberts was working at Hunter Biden's firm, Rosemont Seneca. Yeah, does that remind anyone of Boiler Room or The Wolf of Wall Street? Rosemont Seneca. Sounds so classy, doesn't it? When she became pregnant in late 2017, Roberts, 29, gave birth to Hunter's fourth child, Navy Joan Roberts. Yes, someone named this baby Navy, Navy, ensuring years and years of bullying, actually. This followed a fling with the president's son around December 2017. Hunter, 51, initially denied paternity, and in his memoir, Beautiful Things, yes, that's exactly what that memoir should have been called, instead of, disgusting things, say. He claimed that he had no recollection of our encounter. That's how little connection I had with anyone, he wrote. I was a mess, but a mess I've taken responsibility for. What bombshell messages show Roberts was his employee and that Hunter made sure she was kicked off his company's health insurance plan after she gave birth. He also repeatedly ignored messages she sent to him regarding his unborn child, including pleas for help caring for the baby. The child's existence had remained a secret until May 2019, when Roberts, who is from Batesville, Arkansas, sued Hunter for child support. Of course, Joe Biden never misses an opportunity to talk up how wonderful his son Hunter is. Of course, not as wonderful as his dead son, Beau. He just never stops talking about it. It's as if he thinks that praising the one will somehow cover up for the others. In more political news, this is John Daniel Davidson in the New York Post. Without much fanfare, the Biden administration on Tuesday officially ended the Remain in Mexico policy of the Trump era, the program that required asylum seekers who crossed the border illegally to wait in Mexico for their cases to be heard by U.S. immigration judges. The move comes amid a 20-year high in illegal border crossings and a deepening humanitarian crisis along the southwest border that began as soon as Biden took office in January and went about dismantling Trump's restrictive border policies. In a memo, DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas said the program, formally called the Migrant Protection Protocols, did not adequately or sustainably enforce border management. What could this mean? It certainly doesn't mean that MPP wasn't working, since apprehensions at the border plummeted after its implementation and only spiked after Biden paused the program, signaling to the world that if you can get across the Rio Grande, you can stay. What Mayorkas means that under the program, too few migrants were getting into the U.S., and many more were being deterred from making the journey north from Central America and Mexico to begin with, knowing that they would have to wait in Mexico, often under harsh and dangerous circumstances, pending the outcome of their asylum case. Given those options, many of them decided not to come. In the Biden administration's tortured logic, such deterrent policies amounted to a broken immigration system. We've heard this time and time again from the administration that Biden inherited from Trump a dismantled asylum system, and that the task now is to rebuild a workable and sustainable way to manage the border. This is nonsense. Trump's border policies might have seemed drastic after decades of feckless border policies from both parties, but they were also effective if your goal was to secure the border against illegal crossings. By that measure, Trump succeeded where others had failed. You didn't have to turn away that many people at the border before word gets back to the sending community that the trip isn't worth it. In other words, what the Biden administration is doing is what the Tony Blair and Gordon Brown administrations did in Britain, and what the Liberal Party does in Canada, which is to let in so many people, legally or illegally, that their political opponents can never be elected again. And in fact, a former senior labor advisor admitted this, to the Daily Telegraph more than a decade ago. That was the plan. There can be no more right-wing, since we have all these immigrants from, Africa, Middle East, and South America, and they can say, or the Middle East, and they are not going to vote conservative, and we are going to shove diversity down your throat. Such that in Canada, it's, I don't know, is it illegal to criticize diversity? It's certainly close to that point, and that is the plan. That has always been the plan. And the wit and wisdom of Joe Biden from Charlie Spearing at Breitbart. President Joe Biden argued that Black entrepreneurs needed more assistance from the federal government because many did not have accountants or lawyers. They don't have, let's see, the data shows young Black entrepreneurs are just as capable of succeeding given the chance as white entrepreneurs are, but they don't have lawyers, they don't have accountants, but they have great ideas. The president spoke about Black business owners during a speech recognizing the 100th anniversary of the Greenwood Race Massacre in Tulsa. Biden said he would focus more on small business loans to help Black-owned businesses grow. He also announced the federal government would use more of its purchasing power to support disadvantaged businesses, including those owned by Black and brown Americans. I have the authority to do that, Biden said. He also said he wanted to invest more federal research money into historically Black colleges and universities. Quote, the reason why they don't, their students are equally able to learn and get the good paying jobs that start at $90,000 to $100,000. What on earth is he talking about? But they don't have the money to provide and build those laboratories. He also promised to spend more on infrastructure in minority communities. Let's ensure access to healthcare, clean water, clean air, nearby grocery stores that are stocked with fresh vegetables and food. I mean, these are all things we can do. Well, you know, one of the reasons why these grocery stores close is because of losses from shoplifting. Also, excessive security costs, that sort of thing. Is the federal government going to start its own grocery chains to prevent so-called food deserts? I mean, Biden has the authority to do that. And again, in politics, let's talk about America's greatest gift from Puerto Rico, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She tweeted, just over a week ago, my abuela fell ill. I went to Puerto Rico to see her, my first time in a year, and because of COVID. This is her home. Hurricane Maria relief hasn't arrived. Trump blocked dollars for Puerto Rico. People are being forced to flee ancestral homes, and developers are taking them. Developers are taking them. We immediately got to work reaching out to community advocates and leaders and following the money. What's happening to Puerto Ricans is systemic. Much of it can be traced to La Junta, aka the Wall Street Connected Fiscal Control Board that the U.S. gave power to over the island. Tom Elliott commented, my grandma can't fix her ceiling without a Washington bailout. Stephen Miller responded, she's letting her abuela live in squalor in Puerto Rico. Eric Spencer tweeted, I let my grandmother live like this. Weird flex, but okay. Harry Kacharian tweeted, you earn an annual congressional salary of $174,000, and you are blaming your grandmother's poor living situation on a single term of Trump's presidency. American Patriot responded, if only she had family that cared about her. Tom Elliott responded, hi, AOC, maybe you can sell your Tesla and help out grandma with the $500 it would take to fix that ceiling. Again, from LB, beyond reasoned out, don't you drive a Tesla? I would never let my Nana live like this. I'd pawn stuff if I had to. Oilfield Rando responded, my Latina ex was sending her abuela like half her nail salon paychecks every month. AOC making $174K and living in a luxury apartment, driving a Tesla, and tweeting this. I don't know. They sit on their hands in Puerto Rico. You know, it's a situation rather like Haiti, that someone else will do it. We can't do anything for ourselves. Again, one has to wonder why the opportunity was not taken in 1946 to give Puerto Rico its independence, just as the Philippines were given their independence. And of course, they both came to America via the War of 1898, the Spanish-American War. And in a final universal mental retardation slot, this is from Janie Haar of the Associated Press. A landmark California committee to study reparations for African Americans is meeting for the first time, launching a 2-year process to address the harms of slavery and systemic racism. Slavery. California. Okay. So California was a slave state, was it? No, California was admitted to the Union in 1850, and it was not ever a slave state. But that's not going to stop Gavin Newsom from pandering, because that is what he does best. Let's take a look in at the chat. GC Stahl says the good, the bad, and the Fauci. Nice one. The Last Temptation of Fauci, says Adam. COVID flew over the Fauci's nest, says Oscar Toe. The devil wears Fauci, says Bob Paxson. I like that one. That is a good one. How the Fauci Stole Christmas, Don Willis. The Fauci Connection from Bob Paxson again. Saturday Night Fauci from Bob Paxson. Sisterhood of the Traveling Burks, says Adam. Yeah, I like that one too. Last COVID in Paris, says Don Willis. Ogan's Iron says, but aren't they natural conservatives? Yes, immigrants are natural conservatives. Of course they are, because anyone who wants to come to the United States is a natural conservative. Because what other reason could there be? People, conservatives, don't ever call yourself that. Members of the conservative movement, Conservatism Inc. People come to America because of the liberty. Really? Is that why they come to America? No. I'm sure a few do, but overwhelmingly people come to America because of the money. Because it is so much richer than where they came from, and people actually get paid not to work. How about that? Don Willis is on fire here. Crouching Fauci, hidden COVID. The heart is a lonely hunter, says Picasso at 88. Enron says, Kevin, silly names may be too common at this point for the bullying to happen, at least in some places. Tricky Who says, Boiler Room. I need to watch that movie again. Giovanni Ribisi, he gives off a very unpleasant impression. Not just in that movie. He's in Avatar, and he's the villain. He's the arch villain. You might want to choose James Cameron should have chosen someone less mousy than Giovanni Ribisi. Steve says Greenwald delivering the burn. What is this? Metatron says propaganda Fauci and the Temple of Doom. KMG's channel is a boomer safe zone. Saints be praised, says Bob Paxson. And as an American, I invite and will sponsor KMG, says Bob Paxson. I almost left Canada once for good. There were many reasons why I decided to return. One of which I thought is that, this is where I come from. And this is where I should stay. That, one gets tired of people who fled their countries and, carry on about it instead of putting it behind them. Of course, at the time, before the internet, there was no Canadian news in American newspapers. I mean, you'd see, when the premier of Quebec got flesh-eating virus, he ended up losing a leg. And there was a big story in the LA Times about it. I was living in San Diego at the time. Okay, what's happened next? Has he died? I mean, what's next? And there was no follow-up. Okay, that's enough Canadian news for the week. Peter Brimelow once told me that when Pat Buchanan was the co-host of Crossfire, he wanted to devote the episode on the day of the second Quebec referendum in 1995 to the referendum, because it looks very possible that Quebec might be leaving Canada. And can Canada survive this? I mean, this is obviously a big concern for the United States. And the producer of the show responded, nah, Americans aren't interested. Again, as I say, I got the impression living in the United States that Americans, not all of them, but an awful lot of them, consider Canada to be part of America that they don't know very well, like the Appalachians. Emmett Kelly's Earth contributes situation normal, all Fauci upped. Roulette cracked 2021, a Fauci oddity. Don Willis, Dr. Covago. Okay. 7 Faucis for 7 viruses, says Roulette cracked. Enron says, Dr. Fauci, or how I learned to stop worrying and love the virus. Okay. Don Willis says, 1, businessman, I want to help in the food desert. 2, businessman opens store. 3, businessman closes store. Yeah, well, I guess there's going to be a pharmaceutical deserts in the inner city as well, given, particularly in California. Given the outright looting that goes on there now, which is not prosecuted by the state government, because you can steal up to $950 worth of merchandise in California now, and essentially it's not a crime anymore. Okay, what are we going to talk about next? Oh, Canada. Okay. Okay. We have a conservative party in my country, and it is not a conservative party. When was the last time it was ever a conservative party? Well, you'd have to go back like before Brian Mulroney, because Brian Mulroney, he talked up a big game before he was elected prime minister in 1984 about how Canada was becoming like Sweden, and we don't want that. It was all just talk. Mulroney was as liberal, or more so, than Pierre Trudeau. It was Mulroney who gave us family reunification as the #1 priority in immigration policy. And immigration to Canada had fallen to something like 79,000 annually under Pierre Trudeau. And Mulroney boosted it immediately to 250,000 a year and made that the default. Mulroney was one of those people, they're natural conservatives, these immigrants, and we can get them to vote for the Conservative Party. Well, Stephen Harper certainly believed that, and they were crowing about what a great job they'd done in the 2011 election, where the Conservatives got 31% of the vote of so-called visible minorities. That is to say, they were being beaten more than 2-1 by the other parties. But, as the old joke goes, we lose on every sale, but we'll make it up in volume. So the culture war is over and woke has won. This is the word from conservative leader Erin O'Toole, E-R-I-N. He is actually a man, though he has a girl's Christian name. This is from Stephanie Taylor at the Canadian Press. A video promoting June as Pride Month, coupled with a concerted push to end the blood ban, is what the Conservative Party of Canada looks like under Erin O'Toole, as he works to prove once and for all that it stands for alphabet people rights. Yes, in other words, the cabal of gay PR spivs that has been working to take over the Conservative Party for years has finally succeeded. According to CP, growing the big blue tent to include more rainbow, pink, and blue flags, as well as dissuading people from believing the political attacks of its opponents, comes as a handful of O'Toole's own MPs oppose a Liberal government bill that would ban conversion therapy. Conversion therapy. Yes, your 12-year-old daughter says that she's actually a boy and she has to have male hormones and she wants her breasts cut off. And if you send her, say, to a counselor, therapist, and maybe this came out of nowhere, and so maybe you want to think about it. Yeah, that would be illegal in Canada. O'Toole Tuesday affirmed his party's opposition to conversion therapy, saying forcing someone to change who they are, quote, can tear at their soul, and our party opposes that, unquote. The debates in Parliament are meant to be debates where we can say, is the legislation going to address that harm? And we all recognize in a way that helps people affected, helps the victims, and prevents new victims from being created, and doesn't expand into areas where it's limiting conversations, he said. He's talking through his hat. His party leader, who previously voted in favor of the proposed ban under the caveat it needed amending, O'Toole added he's pro-alphabet people rights, pro-choice, and expects his caucus members to have respectful policy debates. Now, O'Toole only became the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada because of support from social conservatives. They have been duped so often in my country. I've come to the conclusion that politically active social conservatives are the stupidest people on earth. Same thing happened with Doug Ford. Oh, I'm a social conservative like you. As soon as he got elected leader, oh yes, this candidate here, she has to go because she expressed concern about radical Islam. Yeah, she's got to go. And again, oh yes, Aaron O'Toole is our guy. No, he is not. He never was. This guy would support ritual killing, like the Aztecs. If there was a, significant Aztec community in Canada and he thought it would ingratiate himself with the media. During his press conference, O'Toole said that there's more work still to do vis-a-vis intolerance and discrimination faced by members of the alphabet people community. He lauded the work of MPs like Eric Duncan pushing to end the blood donation limits from men who have sex with men. Beginning in 1992, Canada imposed a lifetime ban on blood donations from men who have sex with men after thousands of Canadians were infected with HIV and hepatitis C through tainted blood products. That policy changed in 2013 to allow it. Yes, this was under the Harper government, supposedly conservative government, to allow it if the donor abstained from being sexually active with another man for at least 5 years. And how would you know this is true? Well, I guess you just ask them. That period dropped to 1 year and eventually 3 months in 2019. The Liberal government has said the policy is not one set by Health Canada, but rather by Canadian Blood Services, an arm's length agency. At a separate news conference, Duncan and Conservative health critic Michelle Rempel-Garner announced they had sent a letter to Federal Health Minister Patty Hajdu calling for her to end the ban altogether under the Food and Drugs Act, which would fulfill a promise the Liberals campaigned on twice. Rempel-Garner said that when it comes to pride and alphabet people rights, conservatives are focused on action. She also reflected on how far the party has come. Over the last 10 years of my career, I fought a lot of battles on this issue. We went through the battle of changing the definition of marriage in our party's policy declaration, and we won. I had a moment standing here. Eric was up here talking about this a few minutes ago. I will always remember that moment because we've come a long way. So if you go to Aaron O'Toole's Twitter feed, you will see that he retweeted something from the Conservative Party yesterday. And there's a rainbow flag, and then it says Happy Pride Month. We stand with all alphabet people, Canadians. Hashtag love is love. And then there is an emoji I don't recognize. It's some sort of altered alphabet people flag. And there is a maple leaf, a transgender maple leaf, surrounded by a rainbow sea, and the words "love is love, love is love," filling up the whole box. Love is love, eh? Well, what does that mean? It doesn't mean, gay is good, bi is good, lesbian is good, trans is good. That's not what it means. Love is love means that no form of love or gender expression, as the kids like to call it, can be thought superior to any other form of love. Oh, what about incest? Are you surprised that there's been a major push in the media to legalize incest in recent years? You want to talk about slippery slope? That when gay marriage was legalized in Canada by an obscure Ontario judge, citing an 1867 Privy Council ruling, Privy Council of Britain, on polygamy, conservatives, so actual conservatives, social conservatives said, oh, yes, what, is trans next? Oh, don't be. You're just outrageous, absolutely outrageous. But of course, that is exactly what has happened. People who say love is love cannot rationally object to incest, to bestiality, to so-called, what do they call it, MAP now, minor attractive, whatever. How can they object if love is love? They can't. And this is a Trojan horse. So Aaron O'Toole himself tweeted yesterday, it's Pride Month. Now's the time to celebrate everyone in the alphabet people community and remember the history that got us here. We've come a long way, but there's still work to do. You have my commitment to be there with you, standing up against homophobia, transphobia, and biphobia. And then there's the rainbow flag, and then there's the trans flag. And he attached a short video where he claps his hands and he just loves alphabet people. And he talks about the noble history of gay rights fight in Canada, going back all the way to 1971. We demand. The national strategy took decades of dedication and persistence for all the demands to be met. Although we've come a long way as a country, there's still more to do. I want you to know that I have been and will continue to be an ally. You have my commitment to be there with you, standing up against homophobia, transphobia, and biphobia. Discrimination, intolerance against the alphabet people community is unacceptable and has no place in Canada. Today marks the beginning of Pride Month, a time to celebrate the men, women, and non-binary Canadians of the alphabet people community and remember the history that got us here. I served in the military to stand up for rights of Canadians. I ran for a seat in Parliament to champion those rights. And as Prime Minister, I will work to make Canada more inclusive and safe for the alphabet people community. Let's celebrate everyone in this amazing and diverse community. And thank you for your outstanding contributions to Canada. I'm looking forward to Aaron O'Toole talking about his great fondness for, let's say, puppy play. Anybody who considers himself to be a conservative or on the right, who supports Aaron O'Toole and his party in any way, can only be regarded with contempt. Because there is nothing, again, there's nothing that this man won't do in order to suck up to the woke, to the progressives. Oh, yes, the Toronto Maple Leafs choked again. And I noticed something strange with their avatar. And guess what? It's rainbow colored and trans colored. Yeah. Get woke, stay choke. Yeah. Let's take a look at the take a knee for the 2 to 3%, says Bob Paxson. Why are we celebrating people for their genitals? I don't get it, says Roulette Cracked. In what way is this fool different from Justin, says Ogan's Iron. Maybe a little slower. Maybe a little slower. Puppy play, says Palpcasso 88. You could look it up. It's a real thing, and it has been lauded by major media organizations. Without being too disgusting, it is a form of gay identity wherein, let's say, it's a form of sadism, sadomasochism, in which the let's say the non-dominant partner pretends that he is a dog, okay, with dog costumes and walking around on all fours and being led around by a chain, etc., being locked in a cage, etc. This is one of the many proud facets of gay culture. Again, Lamprey Mill quotes me, "Love is a universal injunction." Exactly right. And again, it is a Trojan horse. Local politics is still important, says Dan Ellison, especially in smaller communities. National politics is fixed. I learned that lesson and won't be voting in federal elections again, ever. The last time I voted in a federal election in Canada was 1997. I foolishly voted for the Reform candidate, Rahim Jaffer, who I knew a little. He was a big friend of Ezra Levant and Jason Kenney. They were all pushing this guy. He was the new face of the Reform Party. He's a Ugandan Asian. And a myth was created about him, about what a spectacular entrepreneur he was. He had his own hip coffee shop in the hip district of Edmonton. It turned out that his parents owned it. And Jaffer turned out to be a very dodgy individual indeed. Emmett Kelly-Zur said, "Is there any point for social conservatives to participate in politics, or should they all choose Dreyer's Benedict option and hope for better days?" Well, you know, if people who believe themselves to be social conservative or simply not crazy stopped supporting the Conservative Party in every way, then something would happen. Oh, yes, but the Liberals will get in. And how would that be any different? How would it be any different? Well, it wouldn't be. It wouldn't be. Admittedly, Canada is a country where every political leader has now been bullied into taking part in pride parades. And you have the very amusing situation of no less than Jason Kenney, who was for the longest time considered the leader, the political leader of Canada's social conservatives, his party begging to be allowed to participate in the Edmonton Pride Parade. And the Pride Parade Organizing Committee said, "No, you haven't shown sufficient commitment as an ally." Yeah, begging to take part in a pride parade. That's real conservatism. Don Willis says, "So log onto YouTube today and get this banner stating Pride 2021 as part of our ongoing commitment to support the Alphabet People community. We're hosting a month-long series of celebrations." Half Galician says, "San Francisco Giants will wear rainbow hats and unis during a game." What would happen if one of the players said no? I'm really curious about this. But, you know, in baseball now, Mother's Day, they wear pink shoes for Mother's Day. Why pink shoes? Because Mother's Day, according to Major League Baseball and others, is about cancer, breast cancer. So Major League Baseball has been, one of the guilty parties in this, that Mother's Day used to be a celebration of life, but they're trying their damnedest to turn it into a celebration of death. The Maple Leafs choked so hard that even Kevin had to mention it. LOL, says Jay Miller. Hogan's Iron said, "Soon, with those central bank currencies, you'll be required to spend some of your money at Alphabet businesses, also Black-owned businesses." Well, nothing would surprise me at this point. I want to talk about the Panopticon, and I'm going to read from Wikipedia here. The Panopticon is a type of institutional building and a system of control designed by the English philosopher and social theorist Jeremy Bentham in the 18th century. The concept of the design is to allow all prisoners of an institution to be observed by a single security guard without the inmates being able to tell whether they are being watched. Although it is physically impossible for the single guard to observe all the inmates' cells at once, the fact that the inmates cannot know when they are being watched means that they are motivated to act as though they are being watched at all times. Thus, the inmates are effectively compelled to regulate their own behavior. The architecture consists of a rotunda with an inspection house at its center. From the center, the manager or staff of the institution are able to watch the inmates. Bentham conceived the basic plan as being equally applicable to hospitals, schools, sanatoriums, and asylums, but he devoted most of his efforts to developing a design for a panopticon prison. It is his prison that is now most widely meant by the term panopticon. So what we're talking about is, from the beginning, that certain people, that is to say, prisoners, the sick, and minors, or people who have lost their reason, would thus surrender their privacy for the greater good. We have moved on from there. That privacy is a thing of the past. Privacy, why is anyone carrying on about privacy? When it was revealed that the Obama administration was illegally spying on everybody, the response from the left was largely, yeah, but it's Obama. Okay. So it must be okay. Again, Glenn Greenwald was involved in, publicizing Snowden, and there were, a few people on the left who are traditional civil libertarians, but we don't need civil liberties anymore. And as the COVID-19 panic has demonstrated, civil liberties, who cares? Very few people, apparently. I know some people care a lot. I've mentioned the Pareto principle a lot, but again, it's important to remember this arithmetic. If you look at the American Revolution, and I've cited this before, how many of the colonists supported the revolution? Well, 20%. 80% didn't. How many colonists were prepared to take up arms in order to fight for the independence from Britain? 20% of 20%. That is 4%. And that's what it comes down to. Michel Foucault, who was crazy and degenerate, but despite this, he had some very interesting thoughts about the panopticon. Again, according to Wikipedia, in 1975, Foucault used the panopticon as a metaphor for the modern disciplinary society in Discipline and Punish. He argued that the disciplinary society had emerged in the 18th century, and that discipline are techniques for ensuring the ordering of human complexities with the ultimate aim of docility and utility in the system. Foucault first came across the panopticon architecture when he studied the origins of clinical medicine and hospital architecture in the second half of the 18th century. He argued that discipline had replaced the pre-modern society of kings, and that the panopticon should not be understood as a building, but as a mechanism of power and a diagram of political technology. Foucault argued that discipline had crossed the technological threshold already in the late 18th century, when the right to observe and accumulate knowledge had been extended from the prison to hospitals, schools, and later factories. In his historic analysis, Foucault reasoned that with the disappearance of public executions, pain had gradually been eliminated as punishment in a society ruled by reason. The modern prison in the 1970s, with its corrective technology, was rooted in the changing legal powers of the state. While acceptance for corporal punishment diminished, the state gained the right to administer more subtle methods of punishment, such as to observe. The French sociologist Henri Lefebvre studied urban space and Foucault's interpretation of the panopticon prison, arguing at the conclusion that spatiality is a social phenomenon. Lefebvre contended that architecture is no more than the relationship between the panopticon people and objects. We have CCTV cameras everywhere now. This is part of the panopticon. We can assume that government agencies are observing all of our emails, everything that we do, all our conversations, people who have cellular phones, mobile phones, and that's everyone. These phones serve to track us wherever we go. So we have a governmental panopticon that exists, and few people have spoken out against this, but we also have a private enterprise panopticon as well. And as that great conservative, David A. French, has informed us, if private companies do something, that can't be bad, because they can do whatever they like, because they are private. In fact, we should celebrate this. Get down on your knees and celebrate Mammon. Here's a thread, a Twitter thread from a Robert G. Reeve. And he is described, okay, well, not anymore. He writes, I'm back from a week at my mom's house, and now I'm getting ads for her toothpaste brand, the brand I've been putting in my mouth for a week. We never talked about this brand or Googled it or anything like that. As a privacy tech worker, let me explain why this is happening. First of all, your social media apps are not listening to you. This is a conspiracy theory. It's been debunked over and over again, but frankly, they don't need to, because everything else you give them unthinkingly is way cheaper and way more powerful. Your apps collect a ton of data from your phone, your unique device ID, your location, your demographics. We know this. Data aggregators pay to pull in data from everywhere. When I use my discount card at the grocery store, every purchase, that's a data set for sale. They can match my Harris Teeter purchases to my Twitter account because I gave both those companies my email address and phone number, and I agreed to all that data sharing when I accepted those terms of service and the privacy policy. Here's where it truly gets nuts, though. If my phone is regularly in the same GPS location as another phone, they take note of that. They start reconstructing the web of people I'm in regular contact with. The advertisers can cross-reference my interests and browsing history and purchase history to those around me. It starts showing me different ads based on the people around me, families, friends, coworkers. It will serve me ads for things I don't want, but it knows someone I'm in regular contact with might want, to subliminally get me to start a conversation about, I don't know, fucking toothpaste. It never needed to listen to me for this. It's just comparing aggregated metadata. The other thing is, this is just out there in the open. Tons of people report on this. It's just nobody cares. We have decided our privacy just isn't worth it. It's a losing battle. We've already given away too much of ourselves. We spotted a senior official at the Department of Defense walking through the Women's March. His wife was also on the mall that day, something we discovered after tracking him to his home in Virginia. This is from a New York Times article. So they know my mom's toothpaste. They know I was at my mom's. They know my Twitter. Now I get Twitter ads for mom's toothpaste. Your data isn't just about you. It's about how it can be used against every person you know and people you don't, to shape behavior unconsciously. Apple's latest updates let you block apps tracking, and Facebook is mad. They're begging you to just press accept and go back to business as usual. Block every app's ads. It's not just about you. Your data reshapes the internet. The internet is never going to be the wacky place it was when I had a live journal and people shared protean gifts in the form of YTMNDs. Big business has come to suck the joy and your dollars out of it. At least make it hard for them. Oh, this post is my Twitter high score. If you like D&D, consider sticking around. My account is 85% tabletop RPG development and 15% leftist politics. Yes, I have 2 affinity cards. I have one for Save on Foods and one for Shoppers Drug Mart. Now, the reason I have these affinity cards, particularly Save on Foods, is that if you don't have this affinity card, effectively you're going to be paying about 20 to 25% extra on your grocery bill. It's not mandatory to get a Save on Foods affinity card, but it kind of is mandatory. If you don't like, if you don't like pissing away your money, you've got to get the card. So that is to say that Save on Foods knows an awful lot about me. What I buy, how much of it, at what times of the day. do I buy it? And they know about seasonal buying and such like, right? And I suppose, Shoppers Drug Mart, well, they know about, a certain type of purchase that I make. I suppose that if I were on any prescription drugs, I'm not, well, then they would know about that too. And of course, they're sharing this. They are selling this. So that is to say that practically everyone alive today is subject to two kinds of panopticons. There's the one from the government, and then there is the one from private enterprise. Because, well, the internet now is, what was it the last psychiatrist said? If you can't figure out the purpose of the product, then you are the product. And we have all been turned into product now. And apparently, we are happy enough with that. If it means, lower prices, and lower prices are the most important thing in the world. But again, and it's not just Save on Foods. All the grocery chains do this, that you become a member of our affinity plan, or else you will be pissing money away. You don't like pissing money away, do you? No, I didn't think so. So join up with us. Of course, they don't need to do that, but they make more money doing that. Let's go to the chat. KMG cooking show when, says Paul Paxson. A bum fight outside KMG's abode. Oh, did I miss something? There was a couple of hours ago, there was a police car, of course, in the parking lot, and there was a man with a very strong voice shouting obscenities and death threats. One has become almost inured to that sort of thing during the day, but as I previously pointed out, it makes it very difficult for me to sleep at night, or if I want to sometimes I want to take a nap before my show, and it's difficult. Zulus do not stand for observation, says Bob Paxson. Ogan's Iron says, blessing of liberty. He also says, I've been hearing about Foucault's thoughts on the health dictatorship. He was monstrously degenerate, but very smart. So said some very true things. No privacy, no property, happy, says Ogan's Iron. Well, of course, that is the plan of the World Economic Forum. You can go to their website. They're very open about it. They have an essay by a Danish parliamentarian talking about the world of, I believe it's 2030, where there is no property. Nobody owns anything, and everybody is happy. There is no privacy, and everybody is happy about that. Because, property and privacy, those are very selfish things, aren't they? You don't want to be a selfish person, do you? Well, of course, what Ayn Rand called the virtue of selfishness, this is what guides us now. Oh, we decided not to have any children because, it wouldn't be right, to bring people into a world as wicked as this. Oh, the world is uniquely wicked now compared to other times in history. Oh, yes. People have, this began before the internet, assortative mating or assortative living. I don't want to have anything to do with people that I have not chosen expressly to have anything to do with. Even, having to talk to a cashier, say, or talk to a bank teller, say, it's just too much. It's too much emotional labor involved in this. It's, I noticed this. It was funny. When I moved to Victoria 20 years ago, I noticed that at the time, it was not unusual when you pass someone on the street, say, or a trail, for people to say hello or good morning or good afternoon to you. And I was really quite taken aback by this, because where I had come from, Vancouver, that if someone speaks to you on the street, you make an immediate threat assessment. Is this person dangerous, deranged, or merely a bore? Why would a stranger be talking to me on the street? Well, in Victoria, they have this habit, a tradition rather, that people thank the bus driver when they get off the bus, which I found quite charming. I think this is going to be killed by COVID-19 because, what you would be turning your head towards the bus driver, and the bus driver is pretty much in a sealed enclosure now. Dionysius says Schopenhauer is right. The world is evil on the metaphysical level. Emotional labor, KMG turning into a sassy black lady, says Ogan's iron. Well, of course, I was saying that ironically. Dionysius says KMG doesn't seem like the type of guy that would be open to greetings. I'm very open to greetings. And, I made a point after I moved to Victoria of saying, hello or good morning or good afternoon to people, with a smile on my face, right? I noticed that some people, though, I would get a resentful look, why are you talking to me? Why are you bothering me? Why are you forcing me to pay any level of attention to you? I did not choose to do that. This is non-consensual. And you hear this, the whole concept of emotional labor is based on the idea that initiating conversations with other people is a violation of consent. That's the basis of it. GC Style says, went to Hero Burger for the first time in months. They replaced order taking with a kiosk. Pricks made me name, email, and phone number as mandatory to complete the transaction. Yeah, okay. Why do I have to give all of this information? Again, this contact tracing. Okay, how is this going to work? I give them my cell phone number, and so someone gets COVID who had been in this restaurant, and how are they going to connect me to it exactly? That person could have been on the very other end of the restaurant. What are the chances that I'm going to pass within 2 meters of that person? I don't know. It's just, again, when during the time of AIDS, mandatory contact tracing was denounced as fascist. It's true. You could look it up. Oh, no, if we institute mandatory contact tracing, then people will go underground. We can't have that. No, but you see, AIDS was overwhelmingly transmitted by men having sex with men, not men being in the same room with other men, but having sexual relations with other men. So contact tracing definitely made sense in that case. But again, it was denounced as fascist. Roulette Crack says they do that here at all fast food joints. Everyone just scribbles unintelligible scrawl or puts fake info in. Actually, I went out to a restaurant patio last night, beautiful night, and a friend said, about this contact tracing info, which he had given. Do they store all of these pieces of paper, all of these spiral notebooks? How long are they going to hold on to them for? Forever? Are they going to be scanned, made machine readable, and put into some database? Bob Paxton says, I love holding the door open for a Shaniqua, and then they walk through like the door held itself open, zero acknowledgement. Yeah, that's one thing that I like doing, is holding doors open for people. The apartment building that I lived in until a year ago, you'd have people, fussing with their bicycle or fussing with groceries or whatever. And I would, whenever I had the opportunity, I would hold doors open for them. And almost always they expressed their gratitude. I was thinking about that I lived in an apartment building, a particular apartment building in Victoria, about half a mile from here, for 10 years. And in that whole time, I never knew anyone else in the apartment building. Sometimes, it'd open the door and the door directly across would open and say hi or something like that. But it's not as if there's a rule against this. 2-3 generations ago, it was just taken as a given that you knew your neighbors. You knew their names. Their names, the names of their children, if they had any, their husband, if they had any, all that sort of thing. And people would interact with their neighbors. There would be reciprocal, favor exchange. I need to borrow some milk or some sugar, or will you look after my little boy? I've had an emergency. I've got to be away for an hour, that sort of thing. But now, the idea of, again, attempting to establish that kind of commonality or that level of intimacy, it now seems it's just gone. It's not coming back. Why would you want to get to know me is the prevailing attitude. But again, I know why this happens, because of this reciprocity that I talked about. The idea of emotional labor. Do you know what the word friendship means? Have you ever had a friend? I want to ask these people who talk about this, because the thing with friends is that they will ask things of you. They will ask favors from you, even if only the favor is you listen to me talk for a certain amount of time. And so often you might not want to listen to this person, but you listen anyway, because that is the decent thing to do. And for all you know, the people that you talk to might consider you a bore, and yet they still listen to you. But no, we have delivery services now, and we have the internet, and we have smartphones. So apparently we don't need other people anymore, except the people that we have chosen to be with based on what are shared experiences and shared interests, which seems to me to be bringing about, just massive boredom, because that is one of the things that makes life worth living. Surprises. But people don't like surprises anymore. Someone might talk about something that he or she is interested in, which you may be interested in yourself, or you may look at a person in a different way. Oh, I never thought that so-and-so would be interested in that. But no, it's all just emotional labor now. John Vance says Canadians have been very elusive in being social, even in small towns. Roulette Crack says children of the state, mistrust of neighbors, but trust faceless bureaucrats. Emmett Kelly's Earth says, do you believe in the God of surprises? I'm not sure exactly what that means. Anran says, Kevin, how many small part actors have been in this many good movies? The Friends of Eddie Coyle, The Sting, Midnight Run, The Untouchables, The Pope of Greenwich Village, Reds, and The Game. Name him. It's not coming to me immediately. I have seen all of those movies, including The Game. And I got to say, at the end of The Game, I have been angrier than I think I'd ever been at the conclusion of a movie. Oh, are you kidding me? Oh, this was all a put on? Really? You almost killed that guy. Oh, because, you wanted to bring him out of himself because his life was so boring, and you nearly got him killed, and he's grateful for it. I mean, when you look at the level, I'm allowed to, I will put up with a certain amount of contrivance. I am, I fight against the tendency to be what Hitchcock called the plausibles. But the level of implausibility in The Game is just off the charts, particularly when you get to the ending. And yes, as I say, I was angry. Oh, the reference to something Pope Francis said. Yes, when he talks about the God of surprises, he means nasty surprises. Nasty surprises, in terms of doctrine. The Pope has a personal magisterium, we have been assured by Father Rosica, which means he can just make stuff up and it becomes Catholic doctrine. Well, that's not how it worked. I used Guy Incognito for my hair cutters. The Game was the last thing he did. Well, okay. Let's just check this out. And okay, yeah, there's many things called the game, including a rapper. Some 20 or 21-year-old rapper who I'd never heard of committed suicide, 2 days ago. And there was a headline I saw, one in the New York Post, saying that he had passed away. A lingering illness, was it? Why can't they just say died? I mean, it's not disrespectful to say that someone died, because that's what they did. Armin Mueller-Stahl? Huh? Could that be it? He was in a lot of movies. An awful lot of movies. I don't know. I'm going to, I can't play this game while my show is on the air. Yeah, David Fincher. Let's see, that movie Seven that he made. I found that movie absolutely detestable. Absolutely detestable. On the other hand, I very much liked Fight Club, and I liked The Social Network. The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. No, I'm not going to watch a movie where everything goes backwards. No, sorry. Not gonna do it. Gone Girl, I quite like that, too. Actually, I like that. Rosamund Pike. And Kim Dickens is in it as well. I'm very fond of her. Oh, finally, I'll end with this. This is from Laurel Wamsley at NPR, National Public Radio. Their slogan is "Hear Every Voice." No, I don't think so. It's called A Guide to Gender Identity Terms. Pronouns are basically how we identify ourselves apart from our name. It's how someone refers to you in conversation, says Mary Emily O'Hara, a communications officer at GLAAD. And once again, another reminder of the sad fate of my people, Mary Emily O'Hara. And when you're speaking to people, it's a really simple way to affirm their identity. Okay, so there's 3 people represented in the graphic. If you go to my Twitter account, you can see it there. There is a person on the right who looks like a woman, maybe not a woman, very short hair, sort of indeterminate clothing, the sort of masculine clothing. And it says, hello, the name tag, they, them. Now, there's a person in the middle who I would say is very definitely a woman, and a woman of color, in fact. And the name tag says she, they. And on the left, there is a person who very much appears to be a woman, and it says he, him. So we see in NPR's America, masculinity has been eliminated because, of course, maybe the idea is that people who are masculine don't make a fuss about pronouns, but I'm sure that Laurel Wamsley was not thinking about that. I don't think she really cares about men very much. Let's see. She's a reporter for NPR, thinking about cities, housing, bikes, soccer. Okay, soccer, eh? Okay, so I think that's it for the show. I'm reading Vanishing Point from 93. Not sure if any good. Struggling for good fiction choices. The Pope of Greenwich Village. Yeah, I thought that was a pretty good movie, actually. Eric Roberts, when he was a movie star. I mean, Eric Roberts has been in, I would think, dozens of films that no one has ever heard of. Okay, too much caffeine and too much Hannity, says Don Willis. Okay, I don't respond to anyone on the street, says Aslan. Popcasso 88 likes Zodiac Fight Club and Gone Girl. Aslan says, just hung up on mom. She can't stop talking about Hunter B. Bye. Okay. Jack Kehoe, Kevin. Oh, that guy. Okay. Yeah. He's the beard. Hello, he's called the beard in The Friends of Eddie Coyle. Yeah. Yeah, there's a series on the Onion AV Club, which features, it's called something Roles, and it features character actors. It's one of my favorite parts of Well, I don't go to the Onion AV Club anymore. That's the only thing I look at the Onion AV Club. I used to spend a lot of time at that site because it was often witty, funny, and I love the comments. It is so crushingly woke now that it is absolutely unbearable. Oh, let's talk about some Preston Sturges movie where there's some joke which involves blackface or whiteface or a black cook trying to cook in a moving vehicle, and so he's rushing back and forth and things are crashing, and that's absolutely outrageous. Is it? Really? And, that's the sort of thing you get at the Onion AV Club now. So tomorrow is Theater Thursday, and I'm going to be talking about a really beautiful and moving film, which is called The Fallen Idol, and it's based on a Graham Greene story, and it is directed by Carol Reed, and stars Ralph Richardson, and it co-stars. I know this is one on my bingo card that I love to talk about, hot women in old movies. Well, the love interest in this movie is a French actress called Michelle Morgan, and she is truly one of the most beautiful women that I've ever seen. A face of such gravity and nobility. On the book club on Friday, I'm going to be talking about a novel by an American actress, originally from Poland, called Dagmara Dominczyk, who you can see in Secession. It's called The Lullaby of Polish Girls. And on the book Music Monday, I'm going to be talking about the amazing story of Bill Drummond, who wrote a book on how to write pop hits. Okay, here's a tip. Start with the chorus. Okay? So I'll be back on the air tomorrow at 4 p.m. 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. If you like the show or any part of it, I appreciate it if you would click on the like button and subscribe to my YouTube channel if you have not done so already. If you would like to make a donation to this live stream, which would be seriously appreciated at this time, no joke, my PayPal account is Kevin_Grace@hotmail.com. Once again, Kevin_Grace@hotmail.com. If you are in Canada, donations to this live stream can be made directly via Interac at kevingrace@shaw.ca. And as always, I leave you with this benediction in these days of social atomization and civilizational collapse. I do dearly wish you, my dear viewers and listeners, that they forge a genuine human connection in order to ease the burden. Good night.